Good evening, everyone. Author R. Weir here in Colorado. Hopefully, we'll get a few people on watching tonight, but I have a great guest. I met him at Left Coast Crime, which was a lot of my guests lately are from Left Coast Crime, and very interesting. He's got a brand new book we're going to talk about and himself, so I'm going to bring him up now and welcome Mark Stevens. Hi, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Randy. Thanks a million for having me on. And how are you?
Great here in Colorado. The weather's been the usual craziness of spring, hot and then storms and rain. You said you had a little bit of we talked a little bit before the show that you had a little storm go through and maybe cause a little fire there.
Yeah, somebody just posted a picture on Facebook of a lightning sparked fire on the mesa across town, and I guess it's not going to turn into anything, but that's always a danger down here. But thankfully, it came right during a pretty heavy rainstorm too, so maybe that helped keep it suppressed to some degree. But it's a worrisome harbinger, perhaps. Yeah.
And that could be a pretty dry, I mean, Colorado is a pretty dry straight state to start with, but that area is very dry
Yeah.
most of the time, isn't it?
Yeah, we're here in Mancos. Mancos is at 7,000 feet, so we're up in elevation. We're sort of the high desert. A lot of pinyon and juniper cover, but yeah, we can go through some very dry stretches for sure. But we also anticipate a monsoon every summer. It's not been as dependable lately as it I guess once was before we moved down here. It used to be very dependable, but we've had several good summer monsoons where it just rains for weeks. So yeah, we'll just wait and see.
Is it kind of like here in the Front Range, we get those massive downpours, and unfortunately, with the clay soil we have, it kind of just runs off and doesn't really soak in.
Yeah, it all depends on how much is in the ground already, or whether how hard it is, et cetera. I'm not a climatologist or meteorologist. I don't really understand all that, but I know the bottom line is we really needed a much better snowpack this winter, and we really didn't get it. So the fact that it warmed up quickly meant that snow ran off quickly, and that's the opposite of what you want. You want a slow melt to really fill the reservoirs, and we just didn't really have the starting snowpack this year to get us where we need to be. So it's worrisome.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, Colorado, the fires have been bad the last few years, but we won't spend a lot of time talking about that because that's not what people are here. So, tell us a little about yourself, the important stuff people want to know about you. Um,
Well, I mean, just I think it's somewhat relevant to the new book too. I did spend almost 20 years as a reporter. Three different print organizations I worked for, three different newspapers, and then I also spent 6 years in producing television news for public broadcasting for the McNeil Air News Hour. If anybody remembers that back in the 1980s, and it's since transformed itself into the News Hour on PBS. Great organization, great people, and I had a great time working there. I had a very lucky journalism career. I was so fortunate. I wanted to be a reporter from the time I was in sixth grade. I would grab my mother's Boston Evening Post. I was the nerd kid who loved the news, and I would take that paper to the couch and read it. And I was watching Huntley Brinkley when I was growing up and NBC News, and I just thought being a international reporter and getting to go anywhere would be so cool, and just getting to see different places and report on amazing things going on. And I just knew from, like I said, junior high right through high school, college, I had my eyes set on being a reporter. Worked for my high school paper, my college paper, and was working as a journalist 2 days after I graduated from college. Um, so the big chunks are I spent 20 years as a reporter and then switched over, much to my surprise, into school district public relations, and worked for Denver Public Schools for 11 years as their director of communications, um, under five different superintendents there. And, really interesting, fascinating job, helping the district tell its story, and also managing many, many crises throughout the years. And then did the same job in Greeley for a while, and then wound up at the State Department of Education doing working there as the director of communications for 4 years. And then about 11, 12 years ago, started my own business and did PR and kind of communications related to anything that clients might need. I worked mostly for nonprofits and education-related organizations. Good people trying to do good things in the world, and I tried to help them with their messaging and their websites, blogs, podcasts, whatever it might be, and just try to help them get their word out. So, yeah, I mean that's the big picture. And all along, back in the '80s, I started writing fiction, and just really have a passion for reading and writing, and it took me a long time to get published. I didn't get published till 2007. But again, I just feel I'm so lucky and fortunate to have had great contacts and network along the way, and growing network that helps. So that's kind of the big picture, other than raising two amazing daughters and being married to a fabulous wife who is just so supportive. So yeah, that's kind of the big picture.
Well, that's important stuff right there. The daughters and the wife. Yeah, that's great. And now they're living away from the big city. And you were talking about all the arts and everything that goes on there. It's sounds like a great place there, and the
Yeah.
gateway to the
Well,
Mesa Verde.
yep. Well, it's the daughters, just for the record, are one's even in a bigger city in New York City, and the other
Oh
did
wow!
stay behind in Denver. But they're all grown up and doing their own thing, which is great. But yeah, here in Mancos, Colorado, we have just this wonderful community. It's so um, artsy, and so much live music, so many artists, galleries, people are producing, and full-time artists. We have poets. We have a really growing writing community. It's just incredible. And a few friends and I actually we're friends through the crime fiction world. Scott Graham from Durango and Chuck Greaves over in McElmo Canyon near Cortez. There was some existing writing community and networking going on here for sure before I got here 6 years ago. But along with a romance writer named Bethany Turner and a poet I met here named Lisa Taylor. Lisa Taylor is also now a novelist. We've just started building this Four Corners Writers Group. And in addition, Lisa and I have been putting on this writers conference in Mancos, which is coming up on its third year in July. We have sold out the first 2 years and sold out again this year for 32 people. And then on July 12th this summer, on Saturday, July 12th, we're putting on a literary festival, a free festival open to the public. And we have 50 authors coming to Mancos for the day to hold panels. We have panels running all day. We'll have individual presentations by these authors in coffee shops and art galleries and restaurants. And there's several businesses that they're going to open their doors to our authors to come in and do presentations about their book or a related topic. We'll have teen workshops, youth workshops. We'll have three amazing keynote speakers at the end of the day. We're just going to flood the town with all things literary and reading for the day. And if folks want to go to Mesa Verde Writers, look for the Mesa Verde Writers Conference, and then the tabs for the festival, you can get a list of all the festival authors. And it's going to be a blast. So, I mean, I never would have thought moving to a tiny town like this that it would just be kind of overflowing with music, books, and arts of every single imaginable kind. Just fantastic. Yeah, Mesa Verde Writers Conference.
Yeah, I've got to write that down.
Yeah.
So I'd love to come to that one. You guys continue to do it each year. Just because it's a beautiful part of the country, too. I mean, I haven't been to Mesa Verde in, 15, 20 years probably.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time. But that's a great place to hold. And you said it's usually in the middle of July?
Well, the conference will be again in the middle of July next year. This will be the third year in a row. This is the first year we've added the festival, and we certainly had planned to do it again. I was hoping for 30 writers to come. We got 50.
Right.
And they're coming in from Massachusetts, Alabama, Vermont, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico, of course, which is right here, Arizona, California, Washington State, coming from all over. to help us hold this festival and have a good time talking about great ideas and books and great stories. So
Well,
yeah,
it's a great. I mean, it's a great setting. So yeah, I don't think you have a real hard time when people learn about it to
hope so.
want to come there. Yeah, it's great. So I read on your bio that you were the son of a couple of librarians. So you were obviously uh, had books at your disposal all the time. So what did you love to read when you were young, and then going on through your life? Obviously, that was a passion, I'm sure.
Yeah, it really was. I had two brothers, and I have two brothers, and I can say I was the one, the middle boy, that somehow got the reading and writing bug. I don't think they disliked reading, but I really loved reading.
Mhm.
And it's I mean, it's such a classic thing. The Hardy Boys got me into it. I mean, they're just the adventures of the Hardy Boys were just so appealing and just fun, engaging. What can you say? I mean, I had so many wonderful teachers as a kid who just kept piling on the books. I can't pull out the titles right now. I can tell you
Sure.
Robinson Crusoe was a real favorite as a kid. Just anything with adventure. I loved any kind of an adventure story. Um, and then I think it kind of went on from there. I loved Alistair MacLean as a kid. In high school, all the Alistair MacLean books. Ice Station Zebra and things like that. Just kind of
Mhm.
pulpy, big stories, just all action packed kinds of things. Um, so yeah, I mean, and as soon as I hit a high school, we had a really progressive East Coast. I grew up in Lincoln, Massachusetts, outside Boston, and yeah, they call it Taxachusetts for a reason because they really support their public schools and their public infrastructure back east. And Lincoln, great little town, they really supported the schools. So we had in high school, I had courses like in American satire or British satire. I had teachers who were turning me on to James Baldwin and just these really deep, to me then, eye-opening experiences of reading really rich text and being asked to write essays about it that were, in retrospect, sort of really college level kinds of things. And I really took to that. I always, any chance I had to take a creative writing course in high school or college, I took. Um, I never really thought I'd, write fiction itself. I might take a crack at writing a short story or something, but it wasn't a super passion to try to write anything. I just was really a reader and a very hungry reader till about 1983 or so, when somebody finally turned me on to crime fiction. And that was really just a mind blowing thing, too, because I didn't really look down on crime fiction. I wouldn't say I really had an opinion about it at all. I just didn't know it. I didn't know the whole idea of a detective novel. I think my parents were a little more above that. My mother in particular was more into literature and things that, and I think thinking back, she actually did read a fair amount of things along those lines. But somebody finally handed me some crime fiction, and I just, I couldn't believe the world that was waiting for me there. So
Was there any particular authors that crime fiction in those early that you really picked up on?
the handful I would point to would be early Elmore Leonard stuff,
Hmm.
things like 52 Pickup and Split, and his Detroit novels, Miami novels, before he really got really super big. And I know some of his westerns are absolutely fantastic too. Um, Elmore Leonard, James M. Cain, The Postman Always Rings Twice, Double Indemnity, fantastic dark books. The Postman Always Rings Twice is a pretty dark little book, and it's just a master class in condensing down to the bare essence of a story. Just absolutely incredible. And then the big writer in my life is Patricia Highsmith. Talented Mr. Ripley, Strangers on a Train. People who've seen the movie version of The Talented Mr. Ripley, and there've been many versions of it. You really have to read the book to get the idea of what it's like on the printed page, because it's just a different experience
Right.
than the video versions. Although the Netflix version this year of Ripley, I think it was late last year, is black and white, maybe 7 or 8 episodes. It was A+, really, really good. Capture of what she was trying to do. But I've read every single, I think there are 25 or 28 Patricia Highsmith novels, and there's many, many short story collections. I've read 2 biographies of her. I'm reading her memoirs, her kind of notes to herself slowly now. It's a gigantic volume, but she was one of the most, she was so able to capture psychological problems with her characters,
Mm-hmm.
and just the whole concept of obsession. She was, when her characters got focused on something, they got really focused and obsessed. And she was great about writing about men. I mean, most of her characters were men, and very, very few of her books had a happy ending. Probably the only one that really did was a book called, it was called Carol, and that became a movie with, I think, Cate Blanchett and some others a few years ago. Really good movie version. It's kind of a happy ending in the book and sort of in the movie. That was originally called The Price of Salt because she wrote it as a kind of a lesbian pulp novel in the early 50s before she even got published. But just imagine your first book is called Strangers on a Train, and Alfred Hitchcock picks it up and turns it into a movie. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the start of a pretty good career. Yeah.
Yeah, that paid a lot of bills, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
with Alfred
Maybe.
Hitchcock involved, right? Hopefully he paid her well.
Yeah. Hopefully. And I think it did pay pretty well, but she struggled all her whole career, her whole life. She
Sure.
struggled. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of difference between fiction and writing as a reporter. So which one do you like better? Is there one I mean, is there I mean, you obviously had a passion for both. Was
Yeah.
there a time where you're like, especially the newspaper industry, of course, has been decimated, and you worked, I'm assuming, for most of the major ones here in Colorado, right?
Worked for both the Post and the Rocky Mountain News. I still have lots of friends, people, kind of network all the ones who left. I left real early. I did not foresee the collapse at all. I left in the mid 90s, and the big collapse was 2008, 2009, I'd say,
Right.
for the papers. The internet just ate up all that classified ad revenue, and just ate up a lot of ad revenue, and it started giving people access to information that they didn't have to pay for a subscription to the newspaper. So I jumped early. I didn't purposely, I wasn't running away from the industry at all by any means. I was still having a great time there.
Mhm.
But I think one little benefit I had was in '83, I just started working at the McNeil Era News Hour for PBS. And I started that daily 5 a.m. Writers Club habit of just getting up and writing fiction. And then for a couple hours, I'd write and then turn off the switch and go to work. And so it's really two different halves of your brain. You're using words, but that's about the only thing that's in common. And, as I go to work, I try to just be thinking about where I was with my story. And, then when I go back to writing it, I'd be ready to write. And there are two different halves of your brain, but I guess it's no different in some ways than, say, learn how to cook and also, being a train conductor or something. I mean, you can do two things, and they're similar, but I mean, I like them both. I love writing a good journalism piece, and they're just different challenges, completely different challenges. And about the only way they really intersect is around research. And I love the research aspect of writing fiction and trying to understand all the details of my characters' lives. And that's where I think having that reporter head is a big, not advantage, but it certainly makes you a little fearless when you go up to people and ask them for help for your fiction. And you want to find out all the details about their work world and all the different issues they're dealing with as a fiction writer. that same process you might be approaching them to write a story about some aspect of their business, whatever they do, you know.
Yeah, I was going to mention the research. Obviously, research is a big thing in either both of those industries. So you spend a lot of time on that, trying to get the facts straight. And I know reading your new book, there is a lot of detail in there, very much so. And in there, I wanted to try to capture a couple of little quotes from your books when you're talking about some of the stuff around Denver here and stuff that I thought was humorous, but I didn't get a chance to get it written down, unfortunately. But let's talk about your new book. It's No Lies Last Forever, and click the right button, Randy. There you go. There's the cover. Is that a Denver? Picture, is that a Denver photograph? Do you know, or do you have any idea?
I don't know. The designer with Thomas and Mercer, they put it together. I kind of doubt it, but it does kind of look like it easily could be. I mean, it's
A little bit of the
yeah,
skyline, maybe. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's pretty hard to tell, but it's generic urban, I guess, is what you'd say. So,
yeah,
yeah, I love the cover. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the story about? I haven't read the whole book yet. I've read about more than halfway through, but it's a very gripping story. But give us a little bit of the.
Sure. Yeah. The overview is let's start with the antagonist. It's the bad guy is a retired serial killer. He's somebody who has moved on. He thinks he's graduated. He thinks he's reformed. He's hiding in plain sight. He works in Denver. He's a public servant. He works in government for the state. Um, and he is living his comfortable life, and he wants to go down in history for having committed three serial murders and never been caught. He wants to be famous slash infamous. He wants drinks named after him. He wants to be a legend. Um, our protagonist is a female television reporter, a veteran. She's been around quite a few years. She's moved up from crime fiction. She's not crime fiction, crime coverage. She's she's wants to do issue stories, think pieces. She wants to do things in depth about the state of the world and how we're living, etc. And one day there's an incident, and she makes some decisions around covering that incident. And I won't go into a lot of details, but she is on live TV, makes a mistake, and she gets suspended from her station for how she handled the situation, and which leads to a death, actually. So it's pretty high stakes, and she does some things that are not what the cops asked her to do in the middle of that situation. She follows her own path and then gets put out by the station, at least temporarily. So she's defrocked, at least temporarily. And what sparks the whole novel is there's a brand new serial killer case, at least a brand new murder that looks like the serial killer is back, that he has returned after all these years, 15 years, and is somehow back in action in the city. And our retired serial killer, a guy who thinks he's hiding in plain sight, will never be caught. He knows he didn't do this. And he knows that it's bad news if the police are starting to sniff around the old cases, trying to figure out this new case. So he wants his name cleared for all sorts of reasons. First, he doesn't want any murders that aren't his attached to his name or on his Wikipedia page, whatever it might be. He wants to have his name clear in this case. So he reaches out to our television reporter, and what forms is a case of mutual redemption. He can help her get her job back, and she can help him restore his reputation. Well, the first thing is when he contacts her by encrypted texting and various apps, she, of course, doesn't believe it's him at all. There's no way this is the actual guy that's contacting her for help. So she is very cynical and distrusting of the fact that it might be him. And the first thing that he does is find a very convincing way to prove to her that it's him. And I'll just leave that there. Once they're once they're hooked up, once they're in touch, then it's off we go, because he can help her ask questions, to the right questions, to figure out what's going on with this new murder. But she can also start to try to figure out who he is.
Yeah, I find it interesting that your serial killer, the original, it's Harry, right? Kugel, right?
Cool. Yep.
And he's worried about his reputation. That's an
Yeah.
interesting way of putting it. He's worried about how the world was gonna see him and stuff. But he doesn't want to be found out. I'm assuming, right? I mean, he
Right.
wants to
Yeah.
still remain anonymous, but so he's kind of a creepy guy. I mean, honestly, like you said, he thinks he's reformed, and he keeps telling himself that. Yet he does things that say, "No, you're not reformed."
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the power of the ability of to tell yourself a story about yourself, where you're really telling that story to yourself about yourself. But I think the reader can see through his actions that he's his own worst narrator.
yeah, he's living on the edge. And then Flynn Martin is the TV personality. And at least from what I read, she seems like she's very confident in her work life, but her personal life, she doesn't seem to have that same type of confidence. Am I reading that character, you think, correctly?
Dead on, spot on. And I would say her work life, she is so committed and so determined to be a solid reporter and to be kind of relentless in her approach. And so she's really got a heavy focus on that. And part of that might come from her father, who was a retired print journalist, longtime, highly respected print journalist. And here she is in a little bit flashier medium, trying to be recognized for her depth as a television reporter. And but yeah, her personal life, she's divorced. She's got a good relationship with her ex. She's got a good relationship with her son Wyatt. But she definitely doesn't have room for romance or anything going on there. It is a very focused professional career, and we see a little bit of that, but and actually there is a sequel coming, and there'll be a lot more about her personal life in the second book. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You can't give everything away in the first book, right? So
no, yeah.
some
I
teasers,
did think
maybe.
it was a standalone, over and done with. And then
Yeah.
when my agent sold it and the editor bought it, she said, "No, we got to find a way to make this." She wants at least two books, and well, it's going to be I think, a tight 3-book trilogy over and out. But so yeah,
Well, that's good. It should be interesting going forward. So I recently spoke to a book club, and they read my. I have a serial killer book too, The Front Range Butcher, and they had a very interesting question to me, and I thought I'd pose that one to you. But they asked me, "What type of headspace are you in to write a serial killer book, especially when you're writing from the point of view of the serial killer?" And I thought, wow, that's a tough question to ask. So I'm going to ask you that same question. Where does your head have to be to write those chapters with Harry in it? Because there's a lot of chapters that are just Harry's point of view.
how did you answer that, Randy?
I told him I didn't sleep at night sometimes while I was writing those chapters. So I had those chapters, but when you're writing, you are kind of getting into that headspace of that character. Now, obviously, you hopefully don't become that character, um, but you're having to walk in their shoes.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's not quite so torturous to me, I guess. So one little kind of wrinkle about this book, just to come clean. I mean, I've talked about it a lot. It's what's really strange about No Lie Lasts Forever is I wrote the first draft of this in 2001.
Oh wow!
Um, it went to its first editor in April of last year, 13 months ago. it's been a book I've been writing in the background of all my other work for 24 years.
Wow.
And so if you asked me exactly what I was thinking back in 2001, I couldn't tell you. You know, at the time, I'd written some novels. I hadn't been published, but I'd written from the point of view of killers. I'd written from the perspective of people who killed for a reason. It sounds kind of crass and cold and mechanical, clinical, and not very kind of like the method actor who embodies the character for weeks, and even when they're off set, they're completely in that character's headspace. I kind of just treat it like a job, and you have to get inside what it takes to be a serial killer. I'm sure there's, and I have, because I just had to write the sequel in a very fast time. I did do a lot of recent research from behavioral analysis folks from FBI cases and people who developed the behavioral analysis units, and read some great nonfiction about serial killers. And I'm not an expert by any means in behavioral analysis, but I think it's a matter of getting inside and just finding a reason why somebody would feel like they need to act out in this absolutely horrific and frightening way. So I guess I treat it a little bit more, from a scientific point of view. Definitely trying to get in all the other characteristics which make him or her, most of my bad guys are him, three-dimensional. And the three-dimensionality is what I hope gives them some weight on top of their one slight, I'm joking, fault. Their one major fault. So I think it's a matter of really understanding everything about your character in addition to the murderous aspects they may have. But I just find it fascinating how transfixed we are as a society with serial killers, and in general with consuming stories about them. And it's just sort of never-ending sort of variations of that theme. They become our kind of our monster of the day, our real life monster, and they are absolutely our real life monster out there. And the good news is, I don't know if you know this, Randy, but the serial killer cases are way down from where they were in the 80s. There's far fewer than there used to be in the United States, at least. And there's a database in Florida where they track this kind of thing. I think there's like 30 or 40 active cases, maybe now, something like that. But back in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, there were hundreds of cases. And they think just all the technology tracking, even all the stories about all the ways serial killers are caught. I mean, it's just the DNA analysis and how sophisticated and refined that can be, that it's just a lot harder for a serial killer to say, I'm going to set out on a journey here and do some damage. It doesn't mean they don't exist. They do, but the whole notion of them is way down, but not in entertainment land, because that is just common element. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I have, when I do events, I do a lot of craft fairs and book events and stuff. And when someone comes to the table, I mention to them I have a serial killer book. And a lot of times their eyes just light up. I mean, people are fascinated. I mean, Netflix and them have had, a lot of documentaries on certain serial killers. So was there any specific ones? You mentioned Ted Bundy. You mentioned what DDK killer, I believe?
DDK was a big one for me. I really studied that one, particularly a book by my late friend Steve Singular. Wrote a great nonfiction book. He wrote dozens of great nonfiction books about various true crime situations, including OJ and John Bonet, and many other cases of the Aurora Theater shooting guy. And his book about BTK was excellent. BTK was in Wichita. He was a prominent member of a church. He was an elder or some sort of officer in the church, yet he was going around town killing women, and in this very, in a pattern. And he terrified Wichita for years. And the only reason he got caught is because he came out of hiding, sort of, so to speak, to taunt the police. And had he not decided to follow his ego out into, back into quasi public space and start leaving messages telling the police how bad a job they were doing, he would probably not have been caught. But it was those messages that led the police to him, not so much all the evidence from the murders. The BTK case was really kind of just I'd say a template for what I was trying to get at with a guy hiding in plain sight with Harry Kugel.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and there's that feeling that sometimes they want to get caught, right? They put out those little feelers and stuff like that. I'm not sensing that, at least from what I've read so far with Harry. I don't think he wants to get caught, but
no,
clearing his name definitely is one of those things. He doesn't want someone to take his MO. It seems like
no, absolutely not. He sees that the pride factor is enormous with him. Yeah.
So you obviously use Colorado as a setting, I think, in a lot of your books. You have a mystery series. I think it was a 5-book series. Allison COil takes place in the mountains, forest here. So what is it about Colorado other than you living here? And I was on a panel where we talked about crime in Colorado. But what is it that you think makes Colorado a great setting for crime fiction?
Well, I think it's just got iconic imagery, because I think anywhere in the country, if you say the word Colorado, people are automatically going to get certain pictures in their head, and it's automatic. And there are some states like that. I think Florida might be one, California might be another, depending on what part of California. I mean, there are plenty of states along those lines, but I think Colorado's got so much drama with the mountains, so much, just dynamic geography anywhere. Sure, eastern Colorado may as well be western Kansas. Sure, very western Colorado could be eastern Utah, but put it all together and you've just got lots of variety and places to hide, especially in the mountains. And then, of course, Denver, a nice big urban jungle if you need an urban setting. And no lie, Last Forever definitely takes advantage, I think, of the urban streets. So in some ways, Denver's not going to really jump out as anything different than, kind of a Chicago or whatever it might be. I mean, it's not New York and it's not LA. It's just a solid Western city. But, once you're inside it, then to take advantage of some of the unique features, the parks, different buildings, and just reference those. I wouldn't say Colorado is head and shoulders above any other location. I think the wonderful thing about crime fiction is you can take it to the most boring place on earth, in terms of, flat and maybe just one big cornfield in the middle of Iowa. And you could set up a story where you're never leaving the cornfield and you're having a great mystery novel,
Field of Dreams, only with a murder, huh?
Yeah, crime fiction is so adaptable to outer space, to back in time, to just about any location. And there are maps out there, and you can go by location if you're traveling anywhere in the world, and they'll tell you what books to read, mystery books to read based on those locations. So in a way, if you're traveling to Amsterdam and you want to read a whole bunch of crime fiction to get yourself familiarized, you can just go by region and go by location. There are very few places left in the country and the world that haven't been touched by a crime fiction writer trying to capture the local flora, fauna, humanity, etc.
So I always like to ask authors, and I haven't been able to read you yet. Are you a plotter or are you a pantser when it comes to writing your books? How do you put those stories together?
Yeah, I've said this before. The people who outline are a mystery to me. I have no idea how you outline a book. It doesn't make any. I just I don't even. It's. I've said it's black magic. I think it's black magic. I think they're alien species, because I don't know how you think ahead that far. I
Hmm.
cannot. I can only see what's now in the moment on a page. I have a general idea of my characters and the tension and the
Right.
stakes, but I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in 2 weeks in the book. And to sit there and go through that process would take me as long as it takes to write a book, which can be a couple of years. So why bother? May as well start
Yep.
hanging some prose on the page and seeing where it goes. And the one thing I've kind of developed a little bit better at is picturing a whole scene before I start writing it. I used to not even be able to picture a whole scene. Now I can kind of picture maybe 4 or 5 pages ahead. But that's just in my head. I don't write it down. I just have a general idea. Oh, the shape of this scene is that. It starts here and it goes there. And here's where it might end. But no, I've always been an organic moment by moment writer. I don't know. And maybe it's my lack of math skills or inability to just not be a good think ahead type of person in general. I don't know. I think it's so important to capture the now of what's in the characters' heads right now.
Well, the characters are kind of coming along with the ride. At least they are for me. I'm a pantster as well, and they're kind of always there with me, egging me on. Sometimes I don't want to say there's voices in my head, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Once you got them going, they're gonna be needling you all day long and giving you ideas, and they're in your subconscious. Once you start writing them, whether you know it or not, and your subconscious will work on problems if you ask it to, and you have to be a little direct about it, I think, at times and say, I've got a problem. And I think Stephen King had this image where you just put two little guys in a bucket and you crank the bucket down the well and you just say, go down to the bottom of the well and don't come up until you figured it out and just leave it alone. And then one day the bucket shoots right back up and there's the problem is solved. And if you've got enough stuff going on with your characters and enough the stakes are high and or at least serious stakes and if there's a reason for this story to tell itself the problem will resolve itself.
yeah. Occasionally you write yourself into a corner, but that's good. You're challenging yourself. I know there are times when I'll do that, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to get myself out of it? Well, the character has to deal with the same thing sometimes.
Right, right, yep, exactly.
So, are you a disciplined writer? Are you one of those that writes every day? Or do you sit down, or do you have to feel like you've got to have that emotion in you to write?
No, it's every day. it's
Yeah.
it's a 5 a.m. writers club. I really believe in it. I love it. When it's dark and I'm alone and there's nothing going on. It's just I love watching the light come up outside. And it's really, I mean, vacations, weekends. Yeah, sure, I'll miss a day here or there. I don't, beat myself up about it. It's not that big a deal. If something comes up, or we're up late some night, sleep in. I just don't worry about it. Just go back. But I would say 5 or 6 days a week. Pretty common for me to be getting in a couple hours every day, and that's been that way for 40 years. And I think it's well. You'd think I would have written more books, but I mean, I was a very slow learner, but it was all very good, useful time. And now, I mean, my brain just kind of wakes up at that time. Give me a cup of coffee, I'm good to go.
Got the
Yeah.
fuels.
How about you? How about you, Randy?
Oh, I'm not as disciplined as that. I have to be kind of motivated most of the time, but I'm very much a streak writer. I can write 30,000, 40,000 words, bang, just especially as I
Wow.
get closer to the end of the project. when I see that end in sight, I get really
Yeah.
motivated. Now I'm independent. I'm self-published. You obviously, you're traditionally published, I believe, so you've got more deadlines that you have to worry about, and contracts you have to. Maybe you've had to ask for. I mean, took 20 some years to get the new book, so no deadline there. But
Right.
did you have
Yeah.
to
The
do a
second.
lot of updating? When
Yeah.
obviously,
Did
because a lot of things have changed in those 20 some years, especially in the newspaper and television industry.
Yeah, when I first got my agent for this book, for No Lie Lasts Forever, who's been my agent since 2016, I think, 16 or 17, he immediately liked the story, but he said, "Can you go back and just check and make sure it's accurate in terms of how the news is gathered and also how live broadcasts are done, things like that." Make because the newsroom technology changes every
Oh, yeah.
10 months. I mean, it just moves and moves and moves.
Like,
So I shadowed a reporter at Channel 4 for a day or two, and Kelly Worthman, a fantastic reporter and anchor there, and she has been really helpful um, to me answering questions along the way. I'd email her some questions. So that was 2017, and then Josh, my agent, was going to try to sell it right away back then. And then I came up with this idea for a baseball novel. And Josh loved that. And so he said, let's hold off on this book. Let's just pull it back. Let's write the baseball book first, which became The Fireballer, that didn't get published till 2023, thanks to the pandemic. You know, that kind of thing is going to happen, obviously. But I was so thankful The Fireballer came out. And then the editor who bought the Fireballer said she wanted to read another book like that. So I always had this idea for a book set in the world of rock and roll. I wrote that book, and she really didn't. Well, she didn't get a chance to read it. She moved up and got promoted and was no longer buying books for that particular position. Her replacement came in, read the rock and roll book, and was not wild about it, but she asked Josh, my agent, if I had any crime fiction lying around, and he sent her No Lie Lasts Forever, and she read it in one sitting and made an offer, and that was in April of 2024. Well, and all along, I mean, I've had to go back and double check all the details because, like you say, and it's so true, the news gathering stuff, it does change very rapidly. So, but I've continually had to update all of that. The other parts, not so much, but the news gathering part for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Fireballer book, that obviously was a little different than kind of your norm that you've written, dealing with a baseball player who has a little bit of a tragic past.
Right. Totally out of my, much to my surprise, thinking I'd be a crime fiction writer my whole life. But when you come across an idea, the one half of the idea was suggested by a good friend of mine, and then the other half came to me, and I put them together. And when I told Josh about the whole idea, he said, "Go for it." So, following my agent's advice, and I really did like the idea. It kind of overwhelmed me, and I think that's, as a writer, you're just looking to be overwhelmed by an idea, right? I mean, it feels so good when you have an idea for a book and you have a story. And if it takes you away for a few days and makes you really start thinking about characters and scenes, that is a good sign that you've got fuel in the tank and you can put it together. So the Fireballer ate up a few years, and it was a great experience to write outside of the normal murder mystery format where you have a murder and you have a way of solving it either through an amateur or professional um, detective. So it was really a challenge, and it came together pretty well. It's done well and won a few awards, so I'm really happy for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's surreal. It's kind of surreal. It doesn't feel like something I would have written.
Well, maybe you have to write a tragic book about the Colorado Rockies and how bad they are right now. So,
Yeah, if you want to spend the next 3 hours talking baseball, let's go. Come on, don't get me
yeah,
started. I
you
think it's a
obviously
crime.
were a fan of baseball. You wrote a baseball book. You must love baseball. The Rockies, they're having, well, they've been bad for the last 3 years, but they're
Oh,
historically bad this year. So
they should be. I mean, I would just wish the fans had a way to boycott, but they just can't help themselves. They Were they pulling 128,000 fans when the Yankees were here last weekend, and
yeah,
that's just too much revenue to give to a team that is basically telling the community they don't care. I really don't get the. I don't. Where's the plan to improve? There is no plan. They're pathetic, and it's not acceptable in the professional sports world to be that bad. In the soccer world, they'd be relegated to the minor leagues, and I think relegation, bumping them down to the minor leagues for lack of performance, that would be a great instigator, a great impetus to try to get them to pick their butts off the mat and get up there and do something.
yeah, I think they need new ownership. Obviously, maybe new general manager too. I mean, they change managers, but that isn't going to make the team any better. They definitely need a new direction. I'm not one of those fire. A lot of people want to fire everybody as soon as they have a bad year, but these guys have been pretty bad for several years. So
Yeah.
all that. So you wrote the Fireballer. So I always like to ask too: is there a book that you want to write that you haven't written yet? Obviously, that was a
Oh,
change.
yeah. As soon as I get through writing the Flynn Martin books, which I've turned in a book two, and I will be soon under deadline for book three.
Mhm.
I do want to write a novel about a small town reporter who basically, this is the general setup. He doesn't know that his newspaper is about to close. He's, just one of these papers that's kind of holding the town together with information, and very small, 1 or 2 man operation. And he gets one last big story that is going to really expose a major problem in the government or in the law enforcement, system, something, or maybe it's a local business that he's going to expose. And here comes the owners to close the paper right before he
Oh.
gets a chance to put that story out. So I haven't figured it all out, but that's generally because I again would draw on my experience as a reporter, and I think I can see where that book goes. Yeah,
Is that going to be based in the general area where you live now, a smaller
yeah,
town? Yeah,
have to be. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And the rock and roll novel actually has many scenes in this area too. It's about a one-time big rock and roll star, and I won't go into too much of the plot there because that has not been picked up yet. But it does end up with many scenes in Cortez and Dolores, which are Dolores is 20 miles one way and Cortez is 20 miles the other. And I think there might be a mention or two of Mancus. I can't remember. It's been a while since I read that one, a couple of years. So yeah, yeah, it does actually. It does end up. It ends. The last page ends in Mancus. What am I talking
Oh,
about?
nice. So you hope to get that published someday. Have you thought about even self-publishing it if somebody will pick it up?
No, my agent is marketing it, and we've had some good feedback so far, but no offers. So yeah, he's optimistic, and I'm optimistic. It's only been being shopped for a couple months now, so it's a
Oh,
slow, as we all know, it's a slow business.
yeah.
Yeah,
Y'all have more patience than I do. So,
yeah,
so we're getting close to an hour here. I want to be mindful of your time. So I always ask all my guests, the show's bringing life to characters. So what is it you do to get those characters? What is it to get them to jump off the page at people, to make them, as you say, three-dimensional?
yeah. Well, I put some thought into this answer because I really appreciate the question, and I
Mhm.
really appreciate. I think this is the biggest challenge we face as writers, and um, I I really think about this thing a lot, Randy. This is what I enjoy thinking about. I love thinking about it. So a couple of things, and I'll try to go through this quickly, and it might be a little bit right up against the hour, but so one line I love is don't forget the novel is the second thing that happens to your character. Whatever story you've got waiting for your character, that's the second thing that's happened. They've already got a world. They've already got problems. They already have issues. We all, as human beings, have issues all the time. And so when the story comes along, this is something, a curveball. This is out of the norm. This is, you know, whether it's big stakes, low stakes, it's going to upset the apple cart. It's going to change their world. And so we really have to know who they are before. We have to know the first step. And there's so many ways to kind of triangulate and think about your characters' lives. And let me just run down a few. And I've talked about these in some workshops before, but you know, here's some questions I would just ask about your character. Do they think life is hard or do they think life is easy? It doesn't matter, but you know, you should know whether your character struggles or whether it's a breeze, because either way, it's going to change. Do they feel like they're in control of their world, or are they out of control? Is somebody else running their world, whether it's work or community or neighborhood or family? Are they in control or are they out of control? Do they have a feeling of self-determination? Are they in charge of their life, or do they feel helpless about it? Are they self-aware? Do they know who they are as a person? Do they sit and think about who they are as a person, and how their actions and how their comments in public communicate who they are to the world? Or are they clueless? Do they just go through the world bashing away and just sort of being themselves and never stop and think about who they are or why they became the way they are? Do they believe in God or do they not? Kind of just an interesting question to ask. If they do, how hard do they believe in it? If they don't, how hard do they not believe in it? What's their relationship with nature? Do they hate it? Do they love it? Do they have to be there? Do they want to just get away? What's their feeling about space and cosmos and evolution? Do they look at the stars and realize that this planet is just part of a incredibly large universe that we really can't wrap our head around, or do they never give it a thought? It's just sort of, you know, a way to triangulate it. Do they realize that as human beings we're animals? Or do they really never stop and think about all the animal-like functions that we have as a creature? You know, we're mammals. You know, what's up with all that? Do they stop and think about it, or do they never give it a second thought? Do they like to play by the rules, or do they reject the rules at every turn? Or do they just play by some rules that are convenient, or do they, you know, make up their own rules for themselves and ignore what society would ask? And then just finally, a whole group of things I think about in terms of power structures, because I think we don't really stop and think about it, but we're constantly in a power dynamic moving around our lives. And where are we in our power dynamic with friends? Some friends we know are in the top dog role of that friendship, and others we're in charge and we reach out, we make sure we're in contact or whatever it might be. But where are they power structures in their family? Are they in charge or having a voice in their family, or has their voice been lost in that family, at work, in society, at church, in their social organizations, among friends? Just if you go through that list and kind of just know each aspect there, you're starting to get a human being who's living and breathing. And when you get into situations with your character, they can comment. We can get inside their head and see them react to various situations and give the reader information that kind of triangulates that character down into a pinpoint as a full human being who's living, breathing, and thinking about who they are before the story even starts. You don't have to understand every aspect. I never liked the character Bible kind of approach of knowing what color they liked in fourth grade or something like that. I think it's just sort of irrelevant detail. But I think as adults, you know, it's a matter of, you know, what are their objectives in life? How easily are they accomplishing them? And a big one for me is, what sacrifices have they made for their own purposes that they feel like, oh, you know, for instance, you know, it's about time I got married, so I'm going to get married. But it's not like super love. It's just like, I'm going to settle for this. I'm going to settle for that. A mortgage, loans, debt. Why do we buy into mortgages? Think of what that signs you up for as a human being, a mortgage.
Yeah.
You know, think of just buying into the whole world of the society we live in. You either it's fine. I did it. I'm still doing it. I'm bought in. But some people aren't. They don't. They see that that's an instant compromise. So where are the compromises? Where are the sacrifices? Or and if they do decide to go out and just live their own life on their own terms, then what are the consequences of that?
Well, I have to say that's probably the most amazing answer I've ever had to that question. That was very, very good. And I will have to say your characters in your book reflect that. I mean, especially your main characters, especially Flynn and Harry. You can see that there was definitely a lot of thought involved there. Now they aren't, and I think most people don't even think that much detail about themselves. Every aspect of their own life, and maybe if we did that a little more, we'd understand ourselves a lot better as well.
It'd be a hard thing to do, but to
Yeah.
take an inventory every day of all the thoughts you have, and they're usually probably going to have a lot of opinions in those thoughts. And we're out here in polite society, you and me, Randy. We are not spewing out every little thought we have. We are living in an agreed upon filtered world. But in there is we have built up opinions about even our friends, but we don't say to them every little thing we don't like about them because that doesn't go anywhere. We have agreed upon kind of communication boundaries, but there's so much other stuff. If you could inventory all the thoughts in your head, you get an idea of the kinds of um, ideas and opinions you as a writer get to play with and show other readers so much information because that's your opportunity and that's your job to get in there and show how they think about the world and to the extent you can why they think that. um, that's that's the meat.
Yes, it is. It is a meet. So we're a little past an hour here. I want to be mindful of your time. I've got a couple more questions. If you're good, if you
Sure,
need to
sure.
leave, we can wrap things up.
That's fine. A couple more would be great.
Okay. So I always like to ask people any advice you give to anyone who wants to be a writer, wants to be an author. Do you have and I think you've kind of answered that already earlier in what you've done in your life as well, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, real quickly, just I would just say write and write and write. That's the one thing you're going to hear from every experienced writer is just keep writing. And the reason for that is you get better. You just flat out get better. And the process is you keep writing and you don't keep it to yourself. You start showing it to other writers, other people, getting feedback, getting into a habit of taking feedback, really separating yourself, your ego from whatever you've produced. Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, great, and you get enough valued, uh, you know, honest, legitimate feedback that it's working, it's really effective. Then you go and you look for an agent or a professional in the business, and if they also agree that it's good, then you're on the right track. If you start bumping into a professional kind of feedback that is telling you there's still work to do, then you go back and keep working at your craft. So write, keep writing, develop a clinical ability to separate yourself from the feedback you're getting from your work. And the third thing is get your writer network together, make friends, go to book talks, go to book events, meet people, go to conferences, practice pitching to agents. Really, offer to reach out, volunteer with these. There's so many writing organizations around. Go volunteer for a writing organization. They're always looking for help. Go help out. Go, clean up, set up rooms, whatever it might be, and build your friendship network of other writers. And then ask to read their stuff. Can I read what you're writing? Would you mind reading a short story I wrote? Could you give me feedback? Can we meet for coffee next week? Can I buy you lunch? If you're a published writer and you go up to a published writer and say, "Can I buy you lunch and pay your brain?" You're going to have a lot of lunches, to buy, but you're going to learn a lot. The writers are so helpful. Writers are so helpful. I've found, and get your network together and build relationships. Encourage other people that are up and coming and read their stuff and get together and make it better. You know.
So Chris, who's a friend of mine, was watching tonight, and she said, "Thanks for being on tonight. She's another author as well. So we've got, I'll sit there, and I know you're going to be going out promoting your book. Your book comes out June 1st.
Sunday.
I
Yep.
believe, from what I remember, right? And
Yep.
what I know, I've pulled this from your site. You've got a bunch of, and I'll hopefully people can see that, but you're going to be doing some promos, doing a little bit of traveling.
Yep. I'll be at Maria's Bookshop here in Durango next Tuesday night, a week from tonight at 6 p.m. And then the following night at Tattered Cover on Colfax at 6 p.m. And Kelly Worthman from Channel 4, who helped me with that research aspect, she's going to join me in conversation, just talking about the media, state of the media today. And we'll talk about the book, of course. And then Wyoming Writers Conference, over the weekend. I've got some workshops to teach up there and a talk. And then following weekend, I'll be back in Highlands Ranch at the Douglas County Library branch there for a talk at 6:30, and then some a local thing here in Mancos, and then off to conferences, both at New Orleans for a big crime writing conference, and then hopefully I'll see everybody at Colorado Gold, Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers in late September.
And do you usually go to BoucherCon each year?
I've missed a couple here and there, but I've been
Were you
going
in Nashville last year?
I did not go to Nashville.
I didn't think I saw you. I was at I was there because
Yeah.
they had back to back Killing Nashville. I also do, and they were back to back in Nashville that year. So we lived in Nashville for 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
the book I'm writing now is mostly taking place in Nashville. So I could write it off, right?
yeah, that's right. We can write it off anyway. Sure, for sure.
That's right. So well, thank you. We've here's your website. I definitely encourage people watching, check out, especially your new book. It's very gripping. If you like that type of story, it's really good. I'm hoping to get it finished. I've been so busy with trying to get my new website online that kind of haven't dug into it as much. But I'm midway through now, and I'm definitely completely hooked. So I'm interested to see how it ends. And when do you think the next book will be out? It'll be looking about a year from now.
Yeah, I don't have a publication date, but it should be spring, early summer next year. Yep.
And then a third book
Yep.
will be in the works as well. Should
Yep.
be great.
Gotta get busy with that. So yeah.
Well, I encourage everyone to check out your books. Writer Mark Stevens. There's a lot of Mark Stevens out there when you search, so including I think there's a couple of actors too. So as well. So so. Mark, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed chatting with you. It was great getting to talk. We only got to talk just a little bit at Left Coast Crime, but
right. Yeah.
I really appreciate you being on the show, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you for your interest, and thanks for all the great questions.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having you on. I know you had your own podcast for a while. I think you're turning over the reins right now. Working with what was it, the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers, I think it was. But I would encourage people to check out some of those interviews. I'm sure those will be interesting to watch as well.
Yeah, I had a great 10-year run, 416 episodes. I was such a great time, and it's just time for a fresh approach and a fresh, kind of writer head to lead the conversation, because I think I just get that feeling of having done it. Just, time for young blood. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
It runs its course, right? So someone will take over the reins, and I'm sure they'll have big shoes to fill. So, but thank you again, Mark. Appreciate you being on tonight. If you want to stick around, you can. If not, I'm going to put you backstage. I'll say bye to everybody, but great talking with you, and good luck with the book. I'm hoping maybe I get a chance to get down to one of the events here in town when you're there. Awesome. We'll see how my schedule works, but I'd love to say hi. I know you'll be a busy guy, but
thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark. All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate you all being on tonight. Enjoyed talking with Mark. I hope you'll check out my latest book as well. Justice for the Forgotten, getting some great reviews. Oh, I got the wrong ticker running here. Good. Got to learn how to run this software still. Justice for the Forgotten. I hope you'll check it out. Getting great reviews. Well, Colorado Bend on my books as well. So appreciate it. Thanks so much, everyone. And I don't know who my next guest will be. I haven't heard yet, but we'll have somebody on probably in a couple weeks. Take care.